Hello YouTube, today I'm reviewing Will Tennyson's program because it was actually highly asked in the comments, and I tend to go by popularity when it comes to program reviews, when it comes to things that are actually famous and that can be found out there. So the one that I'm going to go with today is his old program. I found traces of it around 2015 on the internet. So we're going to go with this one because I think it's the one people requested because it's the most popular one. That being said, I also noticed that recently in November of 2020, he released a new program, which I think is his personal program, which is different. So if you guys are interested in also hearing about that new one, let me know, I'll make a review. But for today, we're doing the old one because this is the one that most people jumped on. This is the one that, in a sense, helped him get popular. So, when it comes to the template, it's 4 days, and it is basically a full body program, meaning that you're going to train the entire body. Because there are so many movements in this program that are going to involve what I would call a desynergistic approach to training that I can't really call it an upper lower. It's not an upper lower. It's not a push-pull leg either. So the only thing I can say about that is this is definitely a full body program, or at least it tries to be. Now, we're going to get into that, but before, I want to say that at first glance, the program looks good, meaning that there are so many programs where I won't even review them because I look at them and there are 80% isolation movements, and so they're bad. By definition, just they're bad. Because for bodybuilding, you want compound movements, and compound movements need to make up the bulk of what you do. You cannot have a 70-30 split of 70% isolation movements. It's not possible. You're wasting your time. Compound movements allow for more tonnage accumulation and they need to be focused on. And it's the same logic for variations. If I see someone who has 4 variations of curls and only 1 variation of the bench press, that person is an idiot because they're not going to progress. So when I scan the program, I see a lot of compound movements, and that's good. I also see within the days a certain hierarchy and organization where the main movement is at the start. That's good. And you might think, well, that is normal. Well, it's normal, but a lot of people don't get that. You need to open the day with your strength work. It needs to be the first thing you do, always. So that's another good point for Will. When it comes to the nature of the program, this is a bodybuilding program, of course, because he's a bodybuilder. I do think that this is something that would actually work for novices if 1 or 2 sets were removed. And I will go through that because I will tell you for each day what you need to remove to match the level of volume needed for your level. For intermediates, that's perfectly fine. For advanced people, of course, the issue with people who are advanced is they really should be working on their own programs and writing their own programs. So if you're advanced, you shouldn't even be following Will's or anyone's program for that matter. So, day one of that program is going to be a push day, in a sense, with bench, neutral grip pull-up, incline dumbbell press, Pendlays, and dumbbell preacher curls. So it's a push that is being supplemented, which is great. Because I explained in the push-pull leg, the issue with push-pull leg is if you follow the template, you're really limiting yourself and you're going to overwork certain qualities of the movement patterns and you're going to create imbalances. When you do pushers, you should also do pulls because you should also work the upper back as well. And even though pushers do require a lot of frequency and volume, it's nothing compared to pulls because the upper back can take a lot more. So it's great to see that on his push day, he has Pendlays and he has pull-ups. So it's going to be an horizontal row, and it's going to be a vertical pull. That is good. When it comes to the progression, because the progression is important, he has a cycle of 4 weeks. The first week is a 4x10, the second week is a 4x8, the third week is a 5x5, and the fourth week is a repeat of week 1 with 2.5 or 5 kilo increase. I will get to that, but I want to introduce it now because we're going to discuss the movements and the exercise selections, and knowing how much volume you're supposed to do is very important. So, you know what I think about 4x10s. I'm not a fan. And here it's pretty much being used as an introduction to the movement where you're going to do the maximum amount of volume, not necessarily tonnage, volume, so that you are going to ingrain a lot of reps. Now, are these going to be quality reps? Even if you push the 4x10, by definition, it's not going to be in intensity windows that push you to failure, because if it was, you wouldn't be able to do 4x10s, because the first 3 sets wouldn't manage to stay at 10 reps. The first could be 10, then 9, then 8, etc. So you're sandbagging. I will say, however, that regardless of the exercise and of the rep range selection, it's not too bad here. And you'll see why. But so you start with day one, you do your bench, and a 4x10 for the bench is actually a good amount of volume. And regardless of the rep range, 4x8, 5x5, those are still rep ranges with a lot of volume. So we already see that he has a bodybuilding bias, meaning that he has a tendency to prioritize higher rep ranges, which results in higher tonnage overall. After the bench, neutral grip pull-up. I like the juxtaposition and the follow-up of the pull-up after the bench. Some people would just do bench, then incline dumbbell press. Thing is, if you give yourself some rest in between the presses, you'll have better performances. So it's smart to put the pull-ups in there. It's also smart because it's going to help deload the shoulders. It's going to make the shoulders feel better. And the fact that it's a neutral grip pull-up is also an excellent choice, because the neutral grip is going to also help with developing the arms, of course, developing the upper back, of course, but you will find that when it comes to grips, if I had to rank them in terms of shoulder comfort, this is the most comfortable grip on the shoulders. So props to Will, he actually knows his stuff. I'm pretty sure this is not random, he did that on purpose. I do have an issue here, however, because if I base my inspection quote review on the rep ranges that I was given, this means that the neutral grip is going to be the exact same rep range as the bench. And you'll see that across the board, you do not want global rep ranges. You cannot apply that to your training, and this is not balanced. You cannot say, okay, today for every single exercise, I do a 4x10. You can't. You need to have specific rep ranges for every single movement for every single day. So this is a little bit simplistic in nature. It can work, I'm not going to say it's not going to work, but it's not sophisticated. And it's going to lead to poor intensity and volume manipulation. But you do your neutral grip pull-ups. Most likely you will do them body weight because the rep ranges are not really suited to weighted pull-ups. They could be, but I truly think that a 4x10 for weighted pull-up is really outside of any relevant intensity window. Then you do incline dumbbell press. So as I said, you gave yourself time to recover, so your shoulders and your upper chest especially are going to be fresher, and you go into the incline dumbbell press. So you get your horizontal and vertical press on the same day. That's great. It's basically what I prescribed. It's a good way to approach presses. So you get your incline dumbbell press. At this point, you have done a lot of pressing volume. So it could be a little bit taxing on some people's shoulder. This is why I say that you want to be able to desynchronize the rep ranges. You want to be able to say, for example, that you'll just do 2 sets of bench on that day, and then you do 4 sets of incline press. Then you switch 2 sets of incline press, 4 sets of bench, etc. This is going to give yourself a balanced strategy to manipulate stress. And I know that it's, for some people, they'll say, yeah, you can just do that. You can just do that instinctively. A lot of people, especially novices, they take a program and they run with it. They follow what the program says to a T, and that can be dangerous because novices also tend to have a poor connection to their body. And even if they feel pain, they have a tough time to diagnose that this pain is something that is an obvious injury in the making. And therefore, they're not going to cut back on volume. After that, Pendlay rows. For Pendlays, something like a 4x10, I actually don't have anything against that. The Pendlays should be done with higher rep ranges for higher volume. It's not a lift you want to do for intensity. So that's good. I would say, however, that depending on the grip, Pendlays can be a little bit taxing on the shoulders for people who have poor mobility, and after all of those presses, that could lead to injury. So I would actually advise people warm up with face pose before they do their Pendlays in this program. And then dumbbell preacher curls, which it's funny because I'm not sure if Will wrote that because I got the program of a third-party website, but optional accessory depending on energy. It's funny that this would be the lift to be optional because it's the least taxing of the day. A dumbbell preacher curl, you always have energy for that. It's not going to be so taxing that you can't do it. Plus, I'm not a fan of the optional here because if you don't do them, you didn't work your bicep on your upper body day. And that is critical because you need to work your biceps. In terms of balance, you will notice, however, on this day that there is no long head of the tricep work, which is critical because it's a big portion of the arm. And there's a lot of work on the shoulders and chest, which would sort of explain why these body parts are so developed in him, is because he trains them all the time, but it's not balanced. The upper back could use some more specific work for the real dart, but in reality, pull-ups plus Pendlays, it's a lot of work for the upper back, so nothing to say here. I do resent the fact that preacher curls are sort of put at the end. Biceps are not an option, you need to train your biceps. But at least it's in there, right? And it's going to be 4 sets or 5 sets, so it's okay. Funnily enough, most of those rep ranges really don't work for bicep. I mean, the 5x5 is too high intensity, the 4x10 is too high volume. The 4x8 is the best, which means that you get an appropriate rep range for the curls only 1 week out of 4, only 1 week out of 3, which is the reason why I say you need to have specific rep ranges. You can't just do them like this. But that's a day that is pretty solid. It's a little bit minimalistic in nature, a little bit too much of a focus on compounds only without enough isolation movements for the small muscles. It's good to focus on compound, but focusing on compound doesn't mean you only do compounds. But in terms of balance and in terms of doability, I do not think this is a day where most people will not be able to go through it. A lot of novice programs are stupid because they have like squat, rows, deadlift, bench, which is way too much work, especially for people who are just getting started. This is good. This is balanced for the upper body. I would say that in terms of supersets, you can superset the incline dumbbell press with the neutral grip pull-up, but it kills the entire idea of resting in between the presses. So I would say that the one superset I would do here is you could superset the dumbbell preacher curls with the bench when you open, so you do bench and preacher curl, then you do the neutral grip pull-up, superset it with nothing, and then you do the incline dumbbell press, superset it with the Pendlays. That would save you at least 35% of the time of the session, and I can tell you it's not going to damage progression. It's going to be extremely tough on your cardio, but you should have a very strong cardio. Your cardiovascular system should be here, and your muscular endurance should be here. Day 2, start with squats, with the rep range that I've already described, that I'm not a fan of, but I will get back to that. After the squat, military press. So after the press, you do Romanian deadlifts. Here, this is actually one thing that I don't like because it worked for the first day, but here I don't think it works. Meaning that I would much rather have the Romanian deadlift follow the squat so that you're still warm, your legs are still warm. The thing with the bench and the pull-ups is that you won't be de-warmed, you won't be unprepared neurologically just because you did pull-ups in between bench and incline dumbbell press, because the incline dumbbell press has a low technical rating. But the RDLs have a fairly mild to high technical rating, and therefore I would want the squat to be first and the RDLs seconds. Which doesn't mean you don't do the military press, you can just do the military press afterwards. And you will see also that the reason why Will might have maybe done that is because he didn't want the military press to be just before the lat raises, because he would have thought in a sense that it would damage the ability of the body to recover. You will see that with the way I'm going to reorganize the day, it's not going to happen. But first, he opens with squat. Squat, if you want big legs, are important. You need to squat. So excellent. Followed by RDLs, I've said it 1,000 times, squats plus RDLs, it's a combo, it's a match made in heaven, it's amazing. And I do think that besides the 5x5, the 2 other rep ranges for the RDLs are really good. So nothing to say about that. The military press, it's a lot of presses because you did bench and incline dumbbell press, and the next day or the day after, you're going to do press again. For some people, this is too much for the shoulders. And you'll find that even if you manipulate the volume, you will end up having to do so little volume or intensity on that day that you might as well not do it. So if you can handle it, do it, but if you can't, don't do it. And this is where I'm actually swooping in and removing things for novices. For novices, don't do military press on that day. Just don't. Or if you want to do them, don't do incline dumbbell press on day one. And for day one, it's the same. If you want to be able to do it as a novice, either remove Pendlays or remove incline dumbbell press. But for day two, if you keep the military press, understand that you can have the military press just before the lat raises. Because what you can do with that day is, we won't superset the squats, because the squat is strength work, it's never supersetted. But you can superset the RDLs with the face pulls, and then if you want to, you can superset the military press with the lat raises. And yes, this will actually reduce your progression and your performance on the military press. But this is really a day where you're not going to perform much on the military press because you're tired from the previous day. So it's mostly going to be volume and pump. So if that's the case, you can follow that mindset and that line of thinking. You can also superset the RDLs with the lat raises and the military press with the face pulls if your focus is on progression. Day three. Day three starts with an incline bench. So we see a strong focus from Will on presses. Incline bench, I have nothing against the lifts. At least it's in a line of specificity with the incline dumbbell press, and it's a variation, so overuse injury is not going to be as prevalent. It's just my personal bias against the lift. I would never treat an incline press as strength work, but if you have a focus on shoulders, you can do an incline press in the form of overhead press or bench incline, and it's going to serve the same purpose. It's going to prioritize the shoulders. Then some lat pull down. I don't like lat pull downs. I think that pull-ups are always better, and on that day, I would have the trainee do chin-ups instead, because it trains the bicep, and on that day, there is bicep work, but not enough. Then you do floor press, so another press. I would just scratch the floor press. This is starting to be too much. Instead of the floor press, the trainee could be doing something else, or just nothing. Because after that, there's a T-bar row. T-bar row can be replaced with a sill row. The issue with T-bar rows is that every time I see someone do them, they use a ton of legs. It's an upper back movement. You're supposed to use the upper back. So, actually, instead of doing the lat pull down, the T-bar row could be replaced with a cable row, so you still do something on cables. And before that, you do chin-ups, so that you hit the back properly with a vertical pull and an horizontal pull. After that, wide grip cable row, so see, he has it, but in my opinion, it ends up being too much. And then hammer curls, optional accessory. Again, optional. So if the trainee wants, he can just never work bicep ever. That's not good. The bicep needs to be trained. So I'm going to organize that day, because out of the 4 days, this is the worst, in my opinion. You start with incline bench, and you're going to superset the incline bench with scroll crushers or behind the right tricep extension for the long head. Then you're going to do chin-ups, and you can superset the chin-ups with, some face pulls for the health of the shoulders, because you're going to need it with a program like this that has you do presses all the time. Then you do some cable row that you can superset with some hammer curls. And that's a day that's much more compact. It's going to be much more prone to help you progress, because you're not spending your time just jumping from a machine to another. This is an issue with this program. Some days are way too minimalistic, and some days are way too bodybuilding-ish, in a sense, with too many exercises that we really don't need. So, in the spirit of reorganizing the program, I would take certain movements from day 3, and you could just put them on day 1 if you really want to do them. For example, the lat pull down, they can go on day 1, superset with the preacher curls if you want. The wide grip cable row also can be redistributed, but I would suggest you follow the advice I just gave you, where I really cut down the day. And it might be counterintuitive, but sometimes a program can be made better if you take stuff away from it. And even for people who are advanced and who can do a lot of volume, I think that this is too many exercises, meaning that this is not a strong focus on progression. And then day 4, which is the last day, military press, so overhead press, so many presses. My shoulders would implode. And I'm going to just scratch that. Again, for most people, you won't be able to handle all those presses. Second lift is an X-bar deadlift. This is what should be first, because this is the first deadlift of the program, besides the RDL, which is a variation. The deadlift needs to be first, and it needs to be programmed as strength work. So the deadlift is first. Then one arm dumbbell shoulder press. He really likes presses. Scratch that too. Walking lunges, very good. So same idea as with the squat and the RDL. We're going to do deadlift and then walking lunges. You do your hip hinge and then you do a knee flexion variation. Excellent. This is how you get big legs. Then leaning lat raises, scratch that, pull-ups, and then overhead tricep extension. Hallelujah, the first long head of the tricep movement, great. You can keep that if you want. You could do a bicep movement instead. You could do a forearm movement instead. It's your body. But for that day, deadlift, walking lunges, pull-ups, and then some isolation. This is what you should be focusing on. Because again, the rest, in my opinion, is it's just extra stuff slapped on top of it, just to be able to say, oh, we did several compounds on that day. But you don't need that. Use the skeleton I gave you and build from it. Because what you build from it is going to most likely be iterations of movements that stay within a line of specificity. That's my big problem with this program. It tries to be full body. Full bodies are the toughest to program because it's too easy to just end up with this type of mentality where you just put all of the compound movements in the world to cover the entire body, but it ends up being too much, it's not synergistic. And it ends up also completely ignoring certain body parts because the traps are never targeted directly, the bicep are barely never targeted, long head of the tricep is never targeted once, the calves are never worked, the abs are never targeted directly, the neck is not worked, certain portions of the upper back are not targeted directly like the real delts, and overall that's way too much body parts that are not really getting any love. And you will pay the price if you do that because you have to catch up afterwards and it's not fun. So I encourage you to follow the practice that I told you to do and to just take it easy with the presses. There are way too many presses in this program. But the idea behind the program, the split in itself is not bad. It's okay. But it's a little bit unrefined. And it clearly shows a bias towards shoulders and chest that is fine for particulars, but for the bigger public, it's way too specific. So I'm going to leave you with that. I'm just going to end with my issue with the progression and rep range. Because as I said, it sort of tempers down from a 4x10 to a 5x5. And in a sense, it's the logic of saying that you start the movement with reps that you can do sort of easily in a sense, and then you bump the intensity up. I think that this is a backwards way to think about it. It should be the opposite. If you watch my evolving rep range, you know that I preach the exact opposite. You start with high intensity, and then you add reps to that to create a rep range that is high volume, not the other way around. Because the other way around with that, the issue with that is you're going to repeat movements that are going to not challenge you, but then you're asked to go up in weight. So you're asked to have the ability to showcase strength progression with a rep range that does not allow strength progression. This is a schizophrenic approach to programming. It works with novices and it can work also for people who are going to be progressing in strength at a rate where they don't realize that their ability to rep the weight is not correlated with lower rep ranges, and therefore they surprise themselves with the ability to do that. But a lot of people will find that extremely frustrating. Plus, they're all static rep ranges, which means that you sandbag all the time. But I would say that for this program, it's not too bad because most movements are going to be sandbagged on purpose to be able to have the secondary movement of the day be performed properly. So that's okay. I would always love a program that is more tailored towards evolving rep ranges in the first place, that doesn't need that type of magic tricks to be able to exist. The weight increase, I have nothing to say against that. The fact that it's a cycle of week 1 and week 4, at least it creates some diversity in the program, I guess. I do think, however, that a full week of 4x10, it's the equivalent of doing a volume day and an intensity day, which I already don't like, but instead you do a volume week and an intensity week. So it magnifies the problem. It multiplies it by 7 or by 4 in that case. So be careful with that approach. That being said, of course, if you're a novice and you do that program and you cut down a lot of the volume, you will see progress because it's a program focused on compounds. So it's not a bad program, but it's not the best either. And that's going to be the same logic I have for every single program I review, besides my own, because of course it's the nature of the beast. I think I do things properly. I think others don't do things properly. End of the day, a program that makes you progress is a good program. So I'm going to leave you with that. If you want to learn more about programming, check the playlist because I just redid them today. It should be super easy to navigate. If you have any questions, let me know. If you want me to review his new program, let me know as well. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.